Yeah, it's Mr. Relevant on your Wednesday, February 28th, the last edition in February. I'm Alex Strouf with you from the Everlight Solar Studio in downtown Madison, as always, alongside the great producer Tiny Hands, our buddy Hunter Vaughn, making us look and sound good per usual. And hopefully we do not run into an issue today that involves a fire alarm going off where we have to evacuate the building. I'm just hoping that does not happen over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour that we're with you here on the ESPN Madison YouTube, Facebook, Twitter pages, as well as wherever you get your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you like to listen. A fun show for you planned today. We're going to talk all things hoops. We'll get into David Bakhtiari a little bit. We will do our second edition of a beef breakdown here coming up shortly, so looking forward to that as well. Stephen Watson of Bally Sports Wisconsin, ESPN Milwaukee, doing a ton of fun things with Bally Sports on the Bucks and Brewers side, as well as with us in ESPN Milwaukee, Good Karma Brands and the Bucks on Bucks Plus, doing some features with them as well. So looking forward to catching up with him about 12:45 in about 15 minutes. All right, so let's start with the fire alarm that occurred during the Badgers-Indiana game last night, as the Badgers ultimately fall again on the road, their fifth straight road loss in Big Ten play to Indiana. I think it was 74-70 was the final, something of the like. So about 10 minutes ago, so about halfway through the second half, you hear, and I was listening on the radio side to Matt LePay and Brian Butch, you hear alarms going off. And you hear LePay start going, okay, well, they're going to evacuate the arena. But they stayed on the air, and then they start ribbing Robbie Hummel and Noah Eagle, who were on the call on Peacock on the TV side, and they're giving them crap about leaving the building. But literally everybody is leaving the building, and then you start reading the tweets from guys like Mike McCleary, who covers the team for the Wisconsin State Journal, that they're being asked to evacuate the building. And then after about 5 minutes of that, everybody comes back on the floor. They do a quick warm-up period, and then they get back to work. But this came at the end of a nice stretch run for the Badgers, where they tied the game up, and shortly after the fire alarm pause, they take their first lead of the night. And ultimately, the three-point shots don't fall. Things go south in the last few minutes, and Indiana pulls away with a win, which, again, as I mentioned, was the Badgers' fifth straight road loss. Head coach Greg Gard after the game certainly making light of the situation.
I thought it was a great timeout for whoever from Indiana pulled the fire alarm for them, because we were making a run. We had a little time in the locker room, not as much as what they originally had told us. And then you get 5 minutes to go warm back up and go play. So it was kind of like having two halftimes.
Kind of like having two halftimes, says the head coach of the Badgers, Greg Gard. And, I'm fascinated by him, and I'm fascinated by the people around him. I'm like one of the world's biggest Greg Gard defenders, it seems. I think he's a good college basketball coach. But given the stretch that the Badgers have had now that it's over in the month of February, not good, 2-6 record. Their only wins over Maryland and Ohio State at home. They lost 6 games in the month of February. 5 on the road, as I mentioned, their last 5 on the road they've lost. This is a team that is viewed well in terms of bracketology and in the selection committee, at least as it stands on February 28th. This is still probably a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament, maybe a 7 seed. I don't think they're in any jeopardy of missing the tournament. Although, is there a realistic possibility they could lose their last 3 games in the regular season? Yeah, I think it's realistic. At least 2 of the 3. They host Illinois, who's ranked in the top 15 on Saturday. They go to Purdue in the regular season finale. So there's a good chance they lose at least 2 of their last 3. But you make a run in the Big Ten tournament, you're probably back up to a 5 or 6 seed if you make it to the semifinals or even the championship game. Which, that's the thing with this team, is they probably have the ability to beat anybody in college basketball. You could also lean on the fact that anybody could beat anybody in college basketball. But really, the Badgers are equipped to beat anybody in the Big Ten and let alone anybody in the country, just given the experience, given some of the star power. But that also relies on everything going right for the Badgers, which in the month of February it certainly has not, especially when it comes to three-point shooting or getting beat at the free throw line or allowing too much inside defensively. they're down defensively. They lost 74 to a bad Indiana team who had lost 4 in a row going into that game last night. So I am not on the fire Greg Gard bandwagon, nor should I be, but something's got to give here as we get into March. The Badgers are a team that I think 4 weeks ago everybody had really high hopes for. There were national analysts picking them as a sleeper Final Four team. They might now be a sleeper second weekend team, given the way things have gone. But I'm not going to put too much pressure on them right now or throw too much shade their way. It was a bad February. It's a team that really quickly needs to turn things around. Do they want to make it to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament? But the good news is they're still in 4th place of the Big Ten. They're still going to get a high seed in the Big Ten tournament, and they're still going to have the opportunity to make a run. Get an upset win on Saturday at home against Illinois. I think all of the fire guard crowd shuts up for a week. And I think that's an easy problem to solve when you face a good Illinois team coming up on Saturday. I want to go back to the fire alarms, though, Hunter. Have you ever seen anything like that? Like, I'm not going to sit here and act like I've seen everything in sports, because obviously none of us have. But that is one of the wackier, wilder situations I ever remember seeing. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned it. There was a fire in an elevator.
Yeah, there was smoke in an elevator that actually set it off. So it wasn't anyone pulling a fire alarm. It just the smoke alarms themselves set everything off. I was really bothered by Peacock's handling of the situation.
So I was not watching the game.
So
fill me in.
So all of a sudden the players just kind of leave the floor.
Right.
And then
Noah Eagle and Robbie Hummel left. Yeah.
Yep. And so they just are like, okay, we're going to send it back to the studio. But clearly, the studio was not ready to go.
Okay.
So you, hear them take their headsets off and, set them on the table. And then they just go to, this big wide shot of the arena that I'm sure you've seen videos from Twitter.
I have.
And then it just kind of sits like that for a little bit. You, literally hear someone tapping on the microphone.
Oh.
And then they go back to the studio, and I don't even honestly know any of the guys' names at the Peacock studios, but then they're trying to talk about the situation without having any information, and you can literally see the analysts on their phone, trying to scroll through Twitter. And I'm like, the producer brain in me is losing my mind. Because I'm I literally had to rant to Sarah about this.
Yeah, Sarah, your wife.
Yes.
Now, I like that you mentioned that part, the producer brain, because I imagine most people in their country are just like, whoa, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
Where you're like, hey, man, the production value here isn't very good.
Yeah, I'm there's an easy way to handle this. I literally walked her through it. I'm they throw to the studio. The producer back at the studio just sends it to commercial break. You give yourself 3 minutes to get everybody situated.
Okay.
You come on and you run your first half highlight package again and recap the first half. Then you reiterate, hey, this is going on. We don't have a lot of information. We're trying to figure it out. You go to break again, and by that time, Indiana would have tweeted. You would have had some information and actually been able to tell people something instead of just being yeah, man, I don't know what's going on.
Well, nobody did. But I got to give mad props again to Matt LePay, who I was listening to on the radio side. I was watching the Bucks game. I had the radio on for Matt LePay, and he wouldn't give up a seat.
No,
right?
Only an act of God will pull Matt LePay from a microphone.
Correct. And he, as I mentioned, he was given hell to well, he was joking obviously, but to Noah Eagle and Robbie Hummel for leaving, and he just kept saying, "I have no idea what's happening, but nobody has told us to leave yet, so I'm staying on the air." It was very entertaining, and I'm just like, wow, I have no idea what's going on here. I mentioned the Bucks game. Boy, oh boy, was that ugly. Bucks win 3 in a row out of the All-Star break, just completely dominating would probably be even a light word choice. The Charlotte Hornets last night at Fiserv Forum, the Hornets scored 26 points in the first half. They had 26 points at halftime. 26. 10 in the first quarter, 16 in the second quarter. That's 26 points in one half of basketball. So I know the Hornets are really bad. I understand that. I understand they're not a good team in the NBA. I get all that. But it is absolutely phenomenal to me that the Milwaukee Bucks, who, by the way, prior to the All-Star break, were getting completely ridiculed for their lack of effort and lack of execution on the defensive side, They held a professional basketball team in the NBA last night to 26 points in the first half. I don't care who you're playing. As long as it's an NBA team and you're holding them to 26 points in the first half, I think it's safe to say things are getting better defensively for the Milwaukee Bucks.
It's also hilarious that now Bucks Twitter is all about how awesome this team is in like transition defense is so great. Look at how great they are defensively now. And I'm like, you are the same people that were talking about how terrible they were. And like, it wasn't good. But, like, don't sit here and now act like, oh, my gosh, everything's great and we're going to talk now when nobody was on Twitter talking about this team. Yes, you were. You're allowed to.
Oh, I am.
Yes.
I'm allowed to take victory laps.
But it's the people who are like, oh, I'm going to be silent about this team until they're good. And then I'm going to do all this talking. I'm going to pull all these stats to show how great this team is. If you're going to talk about your team, talk about your team through the good and the bad.
And I'm excited to talk to Stephen Watson in a minute about it. But it's obviously, you can't put a ton of, I don't know if you can say, I will say it because I've thought it all along. This is a championship contender. And I don't really care what they're doing in January. I care what they're doing in April. And I think when we get to April, they will be in a very good spot. I think when we get to April, they will be a championship contender. When we get to April, they will be a top, I would imagine, 2 seed, right? The Celtics are winning the East. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Bucks are going to make a really nice run. And I think they're 8.5 or 7.5 games back of the Celtics. It's not happening, right? They're going to be a 2 or 3 seed. They're going to get in, and they're going to have their stuff together, man. And I've said this a few times over the course of the last few weeks, but when it comes to Doc Rivers, I understand the ridicule he gets and the criticism he gets in regards to not being able to win the big game. I get it. Right? He hasn't done it since 2008. And he's had really good opportunities with some of the teams he's been with, like Philly and the Clippers, over the course of the last 15 years. But he's still a championship-winning head coach. He still is a brilliant basketball mind. And he has 2 of the best players in the world on his roster, in Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I just don't really understand how this team won't find a way to be looked at as a championship contender and a true team that can beat just about anybody. So I'm all in on the Bucks, and I have been. And now we are 60% of the way through my not so bold prediction anymore that I made right prior to last week's game against the Timberwolves, where I said they're going to win 5 out of the All-Star break. And everybody's going to calm down, and all the national pundits and talking heads are going to eat crow because this is still the Milwaukee Bucks. So what do? We're going to go straight to the source. We're going to go to the studio and in present host. What would you refer to him as? The pre, half, post host? I don't know what his job title is technically.
I'm
so
sure he'll tell us, but I just went Bally Sports.
Bally Sports, okay.
Yeah,
well,
he is Bally Sports.
I tend to agree, actually. Fully believe he is Bally Sports. He's also with our Good Karma Brands team. You hear him on the T on ESPN Milwaukee. He has a big trip coming up. I got to ask him about that with Gabe Neitzel. They're going to tear up Scotland, I'm hearing, as well with doing a bunch of cool work with our new project, Bucks Plus. Stephen Watson joins us now here on Mr. Irrelevant. And Stephen, go ahead, correct the record. Let me know what your official, if you gave me a business card, what does it say Stephen Watson's title is?
I'll go with host. Host reporter is probably the right way of saying it, but I would be pre- and post-game host for Milwaukee Bucks and Brew.
Okay, so what you're telling me, which I have a tendency to do sometimes, is I overcomplicated that?
Yeah, probably. I think that's safe.
Okay, that's fair to say. Fair enough.
I on-air host at ESPN Milwaukee as well. I mean, that's part of my...
Yeah, you're much better than me in that regard, though. You just get it out, right? Like, I'm going to stumble through it. I'll get there eventually. But nonetheless, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for joining us. How is everything? I mean, you're the busiest man in sports media these days.
That's a good title to have. I mean, there's a lot of exciting things going on. I'm just happy to be a part of, what the Bucks look like right now. Bucks Plus on Good Karma Brands. We're getting closer to baseball season, so this is our busy season for the Bally Sports Wisconsin crew.
It sure is, and I'm very excited about the Brewers, but we'll leave them to the side for a couple of weeks yet. So this Bucks turnaround, which I think we can call it now that they've won 3 in a row, is something, as I just mentioned, you may have heard, like national pundits and some of the ESPN radio stuff that we carry here in Madison completely thought this team was over and done with. They thought they were cooked prior to the All-Star break. Now they've come out and won 3 in a row, and they held an NBA team to 26 points in the first half last night. Maybe they're not back, but it seems like they're rejuvenated post All-Star break. From your perspective, where do you think this team's at mentally? Are they still in the mindset of, hey, we're championship contenders, time to shut up the doubters?
Yeah, without question. I think that they felt that all along, and they knew that there would be some growing pains with the coach transition from Griffin to Doc, but I think they have a lot of trust in Doc and his past success as a coach, but also as a person. I think that's such a big part of why they're finding this immediate success with Doc Rivers.
Uh-oh. Looks like we got disconnected from Steven there momentarily. Hunter will work on that as we try to get reconnected with Steven. And you know, I think he was making a good point there in terms of Doc Rivers, right? Like, he is a championship head coach, and I will be asking Steven, you know, what it's like to be around one of the most, like, quotable and memorable head coaches of the recent era in the NBA. Think we've got Steven back now, as we lost him there, mid answer. All good, Steven. I think it may have been on our end, but you were mentioning Doc and the expectations he brings.
Yeah, and I think it's important for fans to realize, and I don't get kind of, in the loop with all the national stuff because I don't like making headlines and I don't like reading headlines. But I think that there were going to be growing pains. Doc knew that. Giannis knew that. Dame knew that. But I think it's also important to realize how quickly they've made progress and how we're literally seeing that night in and night out, especially on the defensive side of the floor for the Milwaukee Bucks right now. I mean, in the couple of weeks that Doc Rivers has been the head coach, they've gone from the 22nd ranked defense to the 6th ranked defense in the NBA. They have 5 times this season held an opponent under 100 points. 4 of them have come in the last 7 games under Doc Rivers. So we are seeing that progress, in my opinion, in fast forward right now. When you look at the actual landscape of an NBA season, the progress that this team has made, especially post All-Star break, when Doc has finally had an opportunity to settle into Milwaukee and get to know the city after starting his tenure on the road in their longest, toughest road trip of the season. I think that's so important to why this team is finding this success, is because he's probably been able to catch his breath just a little bit here in Milwaukee and take a look down and see the new logo on his half zip that he rocks on the sidelines, and getting to know these guys, feeling comfortable with these guys, and just as important, the guys feeling comfortable with him. If you've been around Doc Rivers, he carries a presence, and he's an incredible soundbite. He is very insightful. For us in the media world, we're blessed because, we just get a chance to listen to him, and you can hear just his basketball experience every time he gets behind a microphone. Imagine being a player and being inside of a locker room and having that type of insightful conversation with somebody who's seen so much of this game and had a lot of success and has coached superstars. So I think we're finally starting to see all of that come together. Like, the scheme side of it is one thing, but also just the person and the character and the leader, I think, is why this team has had such a quick turnaround post All-Star break under Doc.
I love that answer, and I'm so glad you bring up Doc, because you just mentioned it, Steven, right? Like, it's only been a few weeks. It's not like this has been all season long. They've gone from obviously Griffin to Prunty for a couple games as the interim into Doc, and he wasn't able to catch his breath. But I just call them one of the most memorable coaches of the modern era in the NBA because of the sound bites you mentioned. What has your time with Doc Rivers been like, Steven Watson? Does he kind of blow you away with the things you just mentioned?
Well, if you were listening to the introductory press conference, I made sure to slide a little golf comment into my first question to him.
Of course you did.
That's what I do. I got a good response. That's the most important part of the goal. No, but I haven't had many one-on-one interactions with Doc. I've been in the room for a lot of his press conferences, but he really, and I'm speaking on my own experiences. When he talks, I listen. But when I listen to more coaches talk about Doc, you realize that everybody's listening. Just last night, I was listening into Steve Clifford when he was talking, before the game of the Hornets-Bucks game. And Melanie Ricks, one of our teammates here at GKB, had asked Steve Clifford just about Doc Rivers and, his coaching tree and what he's meant to the league. And Clifford talked about the NBA coaches meetings that they have every single year. And all 30 coaches come together. And They, share ideas, talk about the league. There's PowerPoint presentations, whatever it may be. But a lot of the times, coaches will zone out, just like any of us sitting inside of a classroom when the teacher gets a little bit boring. But every time that Doc Rivers got in front of the coaches, the other 29 coaches listened, and they hung on every word. And I think that just says everything you need to know about the respect that he has around the league. And that's why I don't care about these national pundits. That's why I don't care about the voices who are saying that he can't get it done in the postseason. This team is talented enough without a head coach to make a run at a championship. But now you add a leader inside that locker room, a guy who has coached a lot of great superstars in this league, Alex. And I think that's what we're starting to see from Giannis and Dame, and them both being coachable is just, allowing this all to speed up. And he's funny, he's engaging. You learn something every time Doc Rivers talks. I think as a fan, as a media member, as a player, that's all you can hope for out of a leader. So early indications from me personally are, let's keep going with this thing. I want to see this guy get behind the mic into June.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man, and you've got me fired up with your perspective and insight on this Bucks team. You mentioned Damian Lillard. I think he is such a fascinating piece to this puzzle, Steven. Obviously, they go out and get him prior to the season. He's had his up moments, he's had his down moments, but he goes into the All-Star week and tears up Indianapolis. He comes back out of the All-Star break against the Timberwolves and is Mr. Fourth Quarter once again. How do you feel like he's meshing with this lineup, and how is he really starting to become the second face, essentially, of that locker room alongside Giannis?
In a little longer timeline, this feels like the Doc Rivers story. When you're talking about Dame, because we live in such a hyperbolic world where we just need instant gratification and everything is the biggest and the best and the greatest. And sometimes you forget and you lose sight of the human element of what these guys are doing as well. I mean, Damian Lillard is a generational talent who spent the first 11 years of his NBA career in one city, getting comfortable there in an arena, having family close by. And then he moves to Milwaukee without his family, and he's trying to figure it out in a new system, not being the main guy. And we're all of a sudden expecting him to come out and score 45 points, be the MVP of the league. Now, it didn't help that the first game against the Sixers, he goes out for 39 and, only makes us think that he can do that every single night. But just like we saw from Doc Rivers in the first few weeks, there are going to be growing pains. Mm-hmm. And Dame would be the first to tell you that he's had growing pains on and off the floor. But I think the stuff off the floor has impacted his game on the floor. And we're starting to finally see him be comfortable in the system. Doc has trusted him. I think that's one of the main takeaways I've noticed on the offensive side of the floor under Doc is that he's putting the ball in Dame's hands more than Griffin did. And they're starting to allow the half-court offense to evolve around Dame, which is something that Dame has done for 11 years of his NBA career. So he's finding comfort in that, and we're starting to see his field goal percentage go up post-All-Star break because of it. So that was a noticeable change under Doc Rivers. I mean, last 3 games for Dame, he's shooting 46%, 40% from three, averaging 23 points, and just as important, he's right around 9 assists per game. The ball is moving right now because Dame and Giannis are controlling the offense. They feel comfortable. Guys are hitting shots. I mean, I think what we've seen the last 3 games is what this team could look like into May and how dominant they can be when Dame feels comfortable, when Dame's shooting at a high percentage. Oh, and they have, in my opinion, an MVP this season in Giannis putting up historic numbers. I mean, he's on pace to be the first player in NBA history to average 30 points and shoot 60% or better from the floor, and it's not getting talked about enough.
All right, so I've got 3 follow-ups on that, and they're all related to you. So, number one, you just rattled off a bunch of stats. I think from memory. I don't think you're looking at something. Do you just have all those memorized? How do you memorize all that?
I do have a little cheat sheet.
You do? Okay.
My best to keep eye contact with the camera. That's my job, right? I gotta.
It's fair.
I gotta stay locked in on the camera.
Well, for the second time, I'm going to tell you you're much better at your job than mine. But continue. Yes, go on.
Well, you do radio, right? I gotta look through the lens. But no, you got the video going right now. Come on, give yourself some credit, Alex.
Doing my best, Steven. Doing my best. Go ahead.
No, but I mean, I just did the pre and post game show last night, so a lot of these numbers are fresh in my head. I wouldn't say that I memorized this stuff, but it is certainly like those numbers. Like I love that part of what I get to do is diving into the numbers and leaning on a Steve Novak to give us the tape and the perspective. My job is to bring the numbers that I think add a little bit of nugget and perspective into the content. So I do love Basketball Reference and digging into Sport Radar and the geeky side of NBA analytics.
Well, you're good at it, but to your point though, like I understand you just did a post-game show last night, but these numbers change every night, Stephen, and you were referencing like 3 games worth, so one game can affect those stats so much anyway. But you also mentioned the human element, and I realize, and I know this about you, you're an empathetic dude. Like I imagine your major was something in TV, radio, film at UW-Madison, but is there a psychology background somewhere? Because that wouldn't shock me if there is.
No, not at all. I mean, I think something that gets lost in our business and journalism in general, and especially in sports, is that we hold these athletes and coaches and teams to this, pedestal. And I think getting to the crux of the human is what fans want to learn. And honestly, it's what these guys want to talk about more than basketball. So that's what I try to do when I talk to these guys in the locker room or get the opportunity to talk to them away from basketball. Is I don't ask them about what they're doing on the floor. That's how you build relationships. That's how you build trust. And that's what I think is one of, if not the most important parts about our business, is gaining that trust and that access, because that translates into the best sound bites and the best content. And it's my favorite part about being a journalist is the storytelling side of it. And every single person has a story to tell. It's our job to try and bring it out.
And you have a really cool opportunity to do that now with the new project with Bucks Plus, Behind the Bucks, presented by Gallagher, which just launched last week. Couple episodes out, but more stuff, I assume, up the pipeline. Stephen, what excites you most about that, and what can we expect from Behind the Bucks?
Yeah, well, it was, first of all, an honor that I was a part of the launch of the first Behind the Bucks content alongside Jen Latta with all around the Giannis, The Marvelous Journey documentary that's available now on Prime Video. We kind of just all brainstormed together how to turn this first series, and I say series because that's kind of what our vision is for Behind the Bucks moving forward, is giving you access, conversation, storytelling that you just don't see on a day-to-day basis around the Milwaukee Bucks. And Giannis's story is, I'm not telling anybody in Milwaukee, Madison, the state of Wisconsin, anybody tuning in, it really is a marvelous journey. And he shared it so many different ways, and it's been told so many different ways. But the first-hand account from Giannis and the family that came out in this documentary really was incredible. If you haven't had a chance to watch it, you must go do it. It is incredible content. And so, it was the vision of some of our teammates here to have this Bucks or Behind the Bucks launch be around the Giannis documentary. And because there is so much interest in his story, not just locally, but nationally and internationally as well. And so we did a 4-part series. Jen Latta talked to the director and producer of the documentary to just go through the art of storytelling. That's something that Jen does such an incredible job with on College Game Day and ESPN on the TV side. So she had great conversations with Kristen Lapis and Connor Schell, who helped produce and direct the documentary. And then I came from more of the covering the team for the last 10 years and some stories that I've always wanted to dig up about Giannis and his family. And somebody I found through the help of John Hammond, who I talked to on the phone, was Joanne Anton, who was, I believe the proper term was chief of state for Senator Cole when he was an acting senator, and then when he still owned the Bucks but was no longer, an acting senator, she helped run his philanthropic organization. And Joanne is from Greece originally, and she met Giannis the first day that he was in Milwaukee. And Giannis, knowing nothing about Milwaukee, barely anything about the United States, she started speaking to him in Greek. And that will, she talks a lot about that conversation and what it meant to Giannis. And John Hammond told me it was perhaps the most important conversation that Giannis had in his early time in Milwaukee, because she made Milwaukee feel like home to him. She kind of took him under his wing. They had lunches together, and she made him feel comfortable here. And a really cool part of our conversation that I learned in the middle of the conversation is that Joanne actually delivered the news to Giannis's family that their visas were accepted and that they would be coming to Milwaukee to join Giannis, which when you think about his marvelous journey, who knows what it would look like without his family coming to Milwaukee as soon as they did. And Joanne Anton and Senator Cole were really the instrumental figures in making that happen. So we talk in depth about that whole process, the lengths that they went to and just her thoughts on what Giannis has meant to the city. And you can go find that on our Bucks Plus audio platform. So that was, one really fun conversation because I learned so much in the middle of the conversation. And then the other part of it was I got a chance to sit down with Thanasis for about an hour and talk about Giannis's journey, but really the family's journey from his perspective, because we hear so much about Giannis and what he's gone through. But Thanasis has a pretty incredible success story himself and an emotional ride of being an older brother to Giannis and trying to protect him and the family, his relationship with his dad. We know how close Giannis was with Charles, and really all the brothers are. And I asked him who the hero is in their family's story. He gave a pretty fascinating answer about that. We talked about him being in NBA's COVID protocol during Game 6 and what it was like watching the Bucks win a title from a hotel room. So we had a lot of fun, and it was a wide-ranging, kind of emotional conversation where we peeled back the curtain a little bit, and he was really transparent and receptive to that conversation. Again, I learned so much about Thanasis. I think listeners would too if they have the opportunity to tune in, and you can listen to that audio. You can actually even watch our conversation as a bonus edition of Thanalysis, which is available on YouTube. So it was a really fun project to launch with Bucks Plus, and we're definitely working on some more storytelling, long form ways that fans can learn about the Bucks and about the history of the team, and certainly anything that might pique our interest of a way to give Bucks unprecedented access, fans unprecedented access to the Bucks, their favorite team and players.
Yeah, it's terrific, Stephen. And the Joanne episode, I just wrapped it up the other night, and I thought it was terrific. And the conversation you two had was so inspiring is one word, but there's probably 100 others to describe it. So really enjoyed it. And you can find that at bucks.com/plus, PLUS, the word plus, bucks.com/plus to find all that. All right, Stephen, I know you're busy as heck, and I appreciate you taking the time. But before I let you get out of here, I got to ask about you and Gabe Neitzel, the On the Tee crew, going to Scotland. Is it this summer? Like, I got to know what's up with that. What are you guys doing besides the obvious golfing some of the greatest courses in the world? Is there other agenda items? Like what's on the agenda for Stephen Watson, Gabe Neitzel, and the crew?
Well, it is this October, so it's coming in the fall. On the Tee is set to launch in a couple of weeks with our 4th season, which is still pretty crazy to wrap our head around. This was just an idea that we came up with when the Ryder Cup was in Wisconsin, because we're just both golf sickos, and we love talking about the great golf in this state and the stories around the sport. And Gabe and I play golf together all the time. We talk about golf, and it's blossomed into a really fun show. And with the help of our presenting sponsor, Wisconsin Golf Trips, we are now launching our first trip, which is going to be come to Scotland and golf, 3 of the top 100 golf courses in the world. We're going to be there for 8 days, play 7 rounds in Scotland. It's an ultimate bucket list trip for myself. I have never been there. Gabe was there a couple of years ago, and you have an opportunity to join us. And we've got packages all available on our website, ESPN Milwaukee or Wisconsin Golf Trips. You can find the links there. The packages are incredible value for the opportunity to play these golf courses. It's the home of golf, and we're going to get to play some of the best golf courses in the world for a week plus, and fly over there. And Jason Coughlin, who runs Wisconsin Golf Trips, has built an incredible itinerary, taking care of organizing the lodging and transportation and a lot of the greens fees for this trip. So Alex, I'm just along for the ride, man. There's let's go to Scotland in the fall, and I have an amazing wife who is just you can't say no to that. And so here we are.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and then I realized the last time I went actual golfing, actually, let's just take it back a few weeks ago. I went to a simulator, Stephen. This is how bad I am. 18 holes, 50 over on a simulator. 50 over.
That's about as hard to do as scoring 26 points in the first half in an NBA game.
I was just about to say that. Good minds think alike. Yeah, I was legitimately thinking, Steven, me, you, Gabe Neitzel, Hunter, who's running the show, and Jen Latta, some of the names that have popped up. I think the five of us could score 26 in a first half of an NBA game. Are you with me on that or no?
That was wild to watch last night. I'm not going to lie.
That's
I'm
pretty
looking at
bad.
Steve Novak. Just like that, this is kind of hard to do. It's hard to score 150 points in a game, but it's also
For sure.
hard to only score 26. They went 8 minutes and 26 seconds without scoring a point of an NBA game. Like that's hard to do.
I legitimately believe we would do better than 8 minutes and 26 seconds. But anyway, I'm also delusional, but I mean, I think we could do it. I don't know.
You know, the good thing is we are not going to be NBA players anytime. But Alex, golf never ends, man. You can pick it up, you can learn it, you can get better. So this be my motivation, and try and inspire you to pick up those clubs and come join us in Scotland, and you can test out your golf on some of the hardest and best golf courses in the world.
I don't know if Scotland would let me leave. I think they would be like, hey, buddy, you made a fool of yourself. You made a fool of all of us. You're staying here. Anyway, Stephen Watson, Bally Sports Wisconsin.
It's just fun. And every foursome needs like the fun guy, and I feel like
I could play that role. I could play that role. All right, I'm taking it into consideration. Ooh, now that's an idea, but you might really hate your score, although you say you don't care about the score. You're the best, buddy. Appreciate you taking the time. We'll do it again soon once things calm down a little bit for you. Again, really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for thinking of me, and continued success to you and the show. I'm a big fan.
You're the best. Stephen Watson, at SWatsonTV on Twitter, X, whatever we call it these days. He is seriously, I use the word empathetic. That might be an understatement. He's like the nicest guy in the world. So really appreciate Stephen taking the time and talking Bucks and the turnaround they've got going on. 3 in a row after the All-Star break, Hunter. I said 5. I think we're going to get there. They only allowed the team they play tomorrow, again, on the road. They only allowed them to score 26 points in the first half last night. So I think we can already chalk that up as a W.
Yeah, but then, I mean, the final, though, they gave up 85 points. Like, come on. What a bunch of bums.
So chill out.
I'm joking. I am getting very excited about the team. I think they're finally consistently doing things well,
yes,
which they hadn't been doing at all this year. So that's all I've asked of them is, like, just figure out what it is you're going to be good at and just consistently do it. And they couldn't do that
but that's
until
the struggle
now.
with hoops, right? Like, that's the struggle, because the Badgers are having the same problem. Marquette's had the same problem, who you root for. It is a problem across the board in that sport. It's hard to be consistent. So I get that, but hey, we're seeing a little bit of consistency from the Bucks now.
But it's even just the consistency of, like, okay, we're going to now go and realize that, the offensive weapons we have, let's run sets and do that and kind of grind out possessions, almost the way that a little bit of kind of what the Badgers do, obviously, but at an NBA level, and be like, teams just can't handle a full possession of having to defend this team. And then let's get back on transition defense. Don't give up easy buckets. Make teams have to work against us then on when they're trying to score, and eventually it just wears them down. And it works.
You're right.
So just consistently do that.
You're right. All right. Couple of things we need to hit. First, let's talk about the Mr. Irrelevant Badger Club Burger Bracket. This Friday, we will be revealing the Savory 16. All of the first round polls have been tweeted into the field except a tiebreaker, which will be posted immediately after the show today. That'll run for 18 hours. When we are on the air Friday at 12:30, we will have the Savory 16 determined. The last 16, the top 16, however you want to view it. According to your votes on Twitter at ESPN Madison, at Lake Louis Beers, we will have the top 16 good to go. We will run the Savory 16 next week. Beginning Friday into next week, we will run the Savory 16. Then we get down to the, I don't even remember, is it Edible 8?
Enticing 8, and then the flavor 4.
The flavor 4. I remember that one, but I couldn't remember what we used for the 8. Enticing 8. I like that. But we start with the Savory 16, which will launch this Friday. Make sure you support, I mean, even if they don't win the polls, it's all good burgers, right? Like, these are the top 64 burgers in the Madison area. Go support local business. Go support local beer, which is an amazing beer, by the way. Badger Club. It's an amber lager. It's absolutely terrific. You can have one. You can have two. And maybe if you're having fun on a Saturday night, maybe you're watching hoops all weekend, you You can have 6. Nobody's going to judge you. Badger Club's delicious. It's local beer, and it's terrific beer, so make sure you check that out at any of those locations as well. All right. So that's the burger bracket. That's where we're at. I want to get to our second weekly beef breakdown, which I think we might make a weekly thing because I love beef. I love drama. I'm learning this about myself, Hunter, because I've been watching The Bachelor, and there is some random beefs in there. I've been watching Love is Blind, the new season of that. Oh, my God, are some of those people stupid, but that's beside the point. I love reality TV. I'm realizing I'm a sucker for drama, so beef breakdown might just become a Wednesday staple of this program.
I love it, except for the person that's going to have to find the beefs. This one was easy because I came across it on TikTok.
I think it might be. I think it might be easier than you expect.
Oh,
because
okay.
people are always beefing. And I'm going to
True.
start a beef as we end the show with what Strouf learned. So I'm going to
okay.
start a beef as well. So, I mean, maybe that'll be our breakdown next week, depending on how well it goes for me. So, Stephen A. Smith has been taking on the New Orleans Pelicans, specifically Zion Williamson. We've seen him over the course of probably the last 6 months or so just refer to Zion Williamson as chubby or fat or any of the synonyms there in regards in his habits of, there was the video a couple of weeks back or maybe a month or two ago, where Zion's pulling up through a drive-thru. I think it was a McDonald's. So Stephen A. Smith not letting this go. So the beef started last week. I believe it was last week Friday when Stephen A. Smith went on Get Up and had this to say about Zion Williamson, the Pelicans forward.
Zion Williamson, it's not about his game. It's about how many burgers he's eating and whether or not he's going to be in shape or is he going to keep eating McDonald's and have chefs clamoring for him to come to their restaurants. That's what he has to prove, that the chefs don't love him any longer, okay? That he's committed to playing basketball and being in shape. Outside of that, you look at New Orleans and you say to yourself, okay, they can have a chance, but you don't know about it.
We can pretty much cut it off there, yeah. So essentially, Stephen A. Brings up McDonald's again, his fast food love, and just dunks on Zion Williamson once again. Shocking, right? Like that's been an ongoing beef. But finally, somebody not named Zion Williamson stepped in. But the issue is we don't know what the person's name is because they hide behind the Pelican social media account. Maybe not hide behind, they probably run it, right? Like this is probably their job and they're having fun with their job. I want to give them more of a positive spin because they handled this beautifully. So just a couple of days ago, the Pelicans just tweeted out this picture. That is Stephen A. Smith, 1990-91 when he played college hoops. His stats say he averaged 1.5 points per game and had 1 assist on the season. So Stephen A. Smith on Stephen A.'s World, which is his podcast he does, I think, once or twice a week, starts a 10-minute rant. We're not going to play it for you.
Thank God.
Yeah, no, nobody's watching that. I did, so I can break it down for you. So he tweets this, and essentially, it's a 10-minute video that says, "You got my attention, Pelicans," and he pretty much starts it by saying, I don't give a damn. But then goes on for 10 more minutes about the Pelicans and the way they responded to him. But he actually spends a good 5.5 minutes or so. When I took the screenshot, I think it was at like 5 minutes into the video. He spends essentially that first 5 minutes saying, hey, just so you know, I actually averaged less points than that. Because in 1989, I cracked my kneecap in half. And I was just a practice player. I was on the roster. I got to keep my scholarship. But I didn't play. Because I couldn't run up the court more than 3 or 4 times without limping. And now at 56 years old, I still limp because my kneecap got cracked in half. So Stephen A. goes on this big explanation. And he's like, you can go check the hospital files in Winston-Salem, North Carolina in 1989, and Stephen Smith was there. It's like, whoa, dude, you seem very defensive about something that happened almost, 30 years ago, 40 years ago? So the Pelicans then respond with a classic meme, and I think it ends the beef. And the Pelicans, by the way, win this beef. They changed the meme that said, I ain't reading all that, to I ain't watching all that. I'm happy for you, though, or sorry that happened. And that kaput, end of beef. Pelicans win. Ding, 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 ring the bell. I don't get Stephen A's fascination with Zion. Is it because he was such a generational prospect that everybody viewed was going to be the next LeBron? Like, he was the biggest prospect in a really, really long time in the NBA. And he just hasn't lived up to the hype yet. Is that part of his beef? Is it the fact that he went to Duke? I don't know. Is it the fact that he actually likes, I like fast food. I went to McDonald's this morning, in fact. I got an orange juice from there. Orange juice, by the way, underrated normal beverage. I typically drink it, like if I'm drinking it with vodka or champagne or whatever, right? Like it's usually an alcohol mixer. I don't drink a lot of straight orange juice. It's a very good beverage. I had a glass of orange juice this
Made
morning.
me think of the scene from It's Always Sunny. Did you know that they drink the mixer straight? But like,
Yeah, that applies for orange juice. With
I
me.
like McDonald's and I like orange juice.
Yeah, just not
But
orange
like-
juice from McDonald's. They have really good orange juice.
Okay, but you can go and get orange
Yeah,
juice
but it's
from
not
like
the
a Quick
same,
Trip,
right?
or-
It's similar.
How is it not the same?
It's similar to their Coke and their Sprite and their Dr. Pepper or whatever they serve, right? Like everybody views McDonald's as different than the rest. I think McDonald's orange juice has a very particular taste that doesn't taste like your normal
probably
brands of
more
orange
sugar.
juice. I mean, realize who you're talking to. That would make sense.
Yeah, it would. As far as the beef is concerned,
Seems like you have beef with my taste in orange juice.
no, you're just a strange human, and for some reason, I'm still surprised by you. I don't understand Stephen A. having to be like, well, actually, my points per game were lower than that.
I love it.
Like, but if you're going to do that, then just go like the full self-deprecation, like that's just the route I'm going to take on this and make it a joke.
No, he made it an excuse.
Yeah, and instead he was like, yeah, he went the excuse route, and I'm like, what are we doing?
I will say-
You're arguing with the social media manager
Correct.
for the New
Correct.
Orleans Pelicans.
You're not going to
like,
win.
What is
You're not-
happening?
You're not going to win. But I will say, Hunter, if you're bored later, which I know you are sometimes,
Yeah.
it's just we all get bored. I would watch the 10-minute video. It's actually worth your time. It's very Stephen A. And Stephen A. is one of the most compelling people in all of media. The way he tells stories and gets after people and nitpicks certain things, he's just brilliant. And the video is actually very entertaining. But the Pelicans' response is a knockout punch in Beef Breakdown. Deux? Is that how you say D-E-U-X?
Part deux.
Why is that the right one? Because you also texted that to me. Deux.
It's French for two instead of just going part two.
So you're just trying
having
to,
some
are
fun.
you just trying to flex the ability you know two in French?
I know it because of the Charlie Sheen movie, Hot Shots Part Deux, and I just thought it would be funny. Like, we're not
Yeah.
taking this segment very seriously.
No, that's
it's not
fair.
like we're
We're not.
professional journalists or anything.
We are not.
So,
We just talked to one, but we are not one.
Yeah.
Or neither of us are one.
yeah, so might as well just have a little fun with it.
Yeah. I like when we get journalists on the program, too, because they are the nicest people, and they are the most well thought out, and they have the most insight. It's-
Classes up the joint.
Yeah, for sure. I bought a pair of glasses, actually, that Steven was wearing. I think I have a very similar pair now. They're clear glasses. Boy, do I look like a tool when I wear them. I mean, like, there are people that can pull those off, and there are people that cannot pull those off. I am certainly one of the people that cannot pull those off. I look like a ginormous D-bag when I wear my clear glasses. Stephen Watson looks like, as I've called him many times on the record before, the most handsome in Wisconsin sports media. He is the most handsome man in Wisconsin sports media, and it works for him. Doesn't work for me. I'm upset about it. That's beside the point. I just got them like last week, Hunter. I'm telling you, I just ordered 2 pairs of glasses. One of them were because they're kind of like the cool, trendy thing right now is like the clear frames, and I they don't work for me, and it's a little bit frustrating because I like to think I'm a decently good-looking dude, like a decently handsome guy.
Yeah, I
But
guess.
decent. I'm not saying I'm a 10 out of 10. I think I operate in like a good 6.5, 7 range, depending on the day. Today I'm probably closer to 6.5. I'm wearing a baggy sweater, right? I'm just phoning it in today. But sometimes I can be a 7. I think when I wear these clear framed eyeglasses, I'm more like a 4. I look like my daddy's a lawyer and, I went to prep school. Like, that's the vibe I give off. And I don't like that vibe. That's not me. So anyway, that's a rant for another day. We'll get to what Strouf Learned in a second. But I do want to talk quickly on David Bakhtiari because Brian Gutekunst met with the media. We only have 6 bars, Hunter, so I would have added this as a 6th, but I want to make this just a quick side note. So Brian Gutekunst met with the media yesterday at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and he essentially said, I have not made a decision on David Bakhtiari yet, which nobody should believe because obviously he's made a decision on David Bakhtiari. He just hasn't acted on said decision on David Bakhtiari. NFL free agency, the legal tampering period begins either March 11th or 12th. I don't know off the top of my head. It's one of those 2 days, which means that's when the books reset. So by March 11th or 12th, whatever the actual day is when the legal tampering period begins, is when a decision is going to be made on David Bakhtiari and be implemented on David Bakhtiari. That is either going to be a restructure. He is currently a $40 million cap hit for 2024. So when I say massive restructure, I mean they've got to get that down to single digits, which David Bakhtiari, if he has, I mean, look, you're just not doing that, right? You can go probably make double figures or $2-digit million elsewhere if somebody's willing to pay you for that. And I imagine somebody is as a multiple-time All-Pro, but keep in mind he is 33 years old. So he's been in the league a while, and he's been dealing with injuries the last couple of years. The no-brainer choice for the Green Bay Packers in terms of business, unfortunately, is, and he's one of my favorite players, is to cut him. And I ultimately believe that's what they will do. He also said in the same press conference that he believes Rasheed Walker, who filled in for Bakhtiari 16 of the 17 regular season games last year at left tackle, proved he's a starting left tackle in this league. So if you're good at reading between the lines, which typically I'm not always very good at because I'm kind of an idiot, but the idiot in this sense, me, can read between the lines. David Bakhtiari won't be on the roster next year, which is too bad because it will always be, and you get these in sports often, but it will always be a what-if situation, right? What if David Bakhtiari never got hurt? What if he didn't re-aggravate the knee injury? What if it was just healthy after the first surgery, right? Would he be able to get back to the All-Pro level? Because the few times we have seen him since the initial injury, he was really good, right? He was still David Bakhtiari. Maybe not 100%, but 85%. So it's just going to be a what-if. But the right move, unfortunately, is to move on from David Bakhtiari from a cap perspective. And really, from a personnel perspective, you're all in on this youth movement. He's one of the last few pieces over the age of 30. Aaron Jones also falls into that category. Preston Smith falls into that category. But he is the last piece on offense that was truly part of the Rodgers regime and truly is Rodgers' guy. And if you want to go full-blown youth movement, this is just another step in that direction. And it's too bad because it always will be a what-if. But the right decision with David Bakhtiari is to cut him prior to the start of the new league year, coming up in just a couple of weeks. All right, let's get into what Strouf learned as we wrap up the show. Each and every day, I tell you what I learned that's new. And oh boy, did I learn something interesting. Hunter, we've spent the better part of this week, not just us, but pretty much any sports show in any capacity, has spent the better part of this week talking about court storming. Right, you storm the court. Oh, man, Kyle Filipowski might have an ankle sprain from Duke after Wake Forest beat them on Saturday afternoon, and they stormed the court. The Demon Deacons did. Filipowski gets knocked down. He hurts his ankle. John Shire's going on every sports radio show in the country complaining and saying we need to ban court storming. You can't have fun. Well, boy, do I have news for you. According to Adam Zagoria, for the New York Times, Duke returns home to play Louisville tonight. Hunter, guess who's expected to play tonight in their first game since Saturday?
Kyle Filipowski.
Kyle Filipowski is expected to play tonight, according to the New York Times, per source. What a hero. I mean, what an inspiring recovery.
He's so tough.
He's just gutting it out. Gutting it out.
They're going to make a movie about him.
They might. Kyle.
Kyle.
I mean, come on. We made this the biggest deal in the world. And, look, I get the case we're making. The kid got hit. He shouldn't have been hit. He shouldn't have wound up on the floor, and it's too bad that he rolled his ankle. It is. But we have made this kid the pity story of American sports the last 72, 96 hours. And I look, I really didn't look into whether or not he was going to play. I don't know if he was listed as questionable. I don't know if he missed practices. I don't know. But the fact is, we made a mountain out of a molehill when it comes to court storming. So, for me, who my beef with court storming is, if you're favored, don't storm the court. If they're not a top 10 team in the country, don't storm the court. But let kids have fun, man. And just get your players off the court. Most of these games are done by the time they're done anyway. Filipowski should have been at the bench. It's too bad he wasn't. It's too bad what happened to him. But damn, is he an American hero playing tonight against Louisville.
What's even really funny is they could have benched him and acted like it was a bigger deal. They still were going to beat Louisville.
Yeah.
They're like the worst team in college basketball this year.
Yeah.
And instead, he's going to play, and then it's again, this is where I kind of hate being a fan of Duke right now because it's they're just going to get ripped apart for it because they're being idiots. And you have Jay Billis being a lawyer and
Arrest
acting
everybody.
like, yeah, you have to arrest
everybody.
them. Which, again, his argument is if you're going to do it, that's what you need to do to stop it. That's what his argument is. And he's not wrong about that, and it's all just stupid. Just let college kids be college kids. If anything, make them wait 30 seconds to get on the floor so you can get everybody off.
Put
and that's it.
Put a clock on the Jumbotron.
Yep, it's easy. You could even make it like the fun New Year's Eve type clock.
Encourage it.
Like,
You can encourage it.
get into it. But instead, we're just going to ban it and make it a whole thing, and it's going to be stupid.
Yeah,
and I hate it.
You're absolutely right. All right, one last thing for you, Hunter, before we get out of here. Caitlin Clark, 51 points away from breaking Pistol Pete's collegiate record. 51 points away. Number 6 Iowa visits Minnesota tonight. It's on Peacock, an 8 o'clock tip. 51 is the number. 50 to tie. Does Caitlin Clark have it in her tonight? That's a lot of points.
I don't think so because I'm pretty sure their next game is against number 2 Ohio State. She's going to save it for that game.
Save it? So you think she's choosing not to score 51 tonight?
Yeah.
I actually really like that take.
Well,
I'm with you.
They don't need her to score 51 to beat Minnesota.
No, Minnesota's 15-12. They're not good.
Yeah.
But they're fine, but they're not good. Iowa's favored by 19.5 points. She probably won't play in the fourth quarter, or at least play much. So I'm going to be with you. I'm going to say it happens. What is it, Saturday, you said?
Yeah, I believe it's Saturday against Ohio State. So maybe TikTok will have, I think Fox did it when she was going for the record.
They did.
The
women's
TikTok
record, yeah.
Caitlin Cam. Maybe they do that again. That was fun.
I was watching that as well.
Yeah, it was fun.
TikTok is a way of life these days, man. That's very strange that we were both watching the same thing and haven't talked about it until right now. All right, that does it for us today. A big thanks again to Stephen Watson, busiest man in sports media from Bally Sports Wisconsin, ESPN Milwaukee, for joining us, talking Bucks, talking shenanigans, and all the in-betweens. Always appreciate his time. Nicest dude ever. Hunter, you're pretty close to the nicest dude ever, although you did yell at me the minute I walked in today, but that's beside the point. We're not going to get into it. Everything's fine. The hatchet is buried. We're good. Everything's fine. Hunter Vaughn, producer Tiny Hands, as always, running the show. I'm Alex Strouf from the Everlight Solar Studio saying so long. We're back with you Friday at 12:30. It's Mr. Relevant. I'm Alex Strouf. We'll talk to you Friday. Peace.